Hello everyone and welcome back to Berlin Noir. So right off the bat, I want to discuss some of the things that I asked in the previous episode. So number one being, I asked how you guys think I should go about building the city. Whether it should be Berlin inspired, so loosely based with a lot of creative freedoms, or if I should try and build as accurately as possible a Berlin, even one-to-one recreation. And so based on your guys' response, it was actually pretty much 50-50 split on what you guys thought. There's a lot that said they wanted a one-to-one recreation of Berlin. There's a lot that said just to be loosely inspired. And there were some in the middle, which were more or less saying to lay the landmarks such as the Brandenburg Gate in the very first episode, and what I'm building here on screen, the Reichstag. Place those like where they should be pretty accurately, so maybe not necessarily 100% an exact spot, but relatively close to where they are in real life. And then also anything that's iconic to Berlin, place as accurately as possible. But then all the the filler parts, so just the row houses or just everything else to take some creative liberties and not necessarily have to copy, which is what I was leaning to really doing originally. So I think that's what it's going to be. I'm gonna just place all the iconic structures of Berlin in the accurate spot, and then just kind of take some liberties when it comes to some other aspects of the city that will be more or less hard to also copy 100% anyways, considering it's a lot has changed and can't really use Google Maps, and the resources I do have, like the 1928 satellite view, which I mentioned before, which is really awesome, but it's still from 1928, so it's a little hard to see some of the things from the satellite view. But anyway, so here, as you can see, I am building the Reichstag, and so for those of you who know where this is actually located, it's relatively close to the river, but it doesn't run parallel to the river as I am having it here. So it's, as I would say, pretty close to its actual real life position, but still a little differences here and there. But so looking at the resource from 1928, the satellite view of this area, it was surprisingly plain. And I guess even the if I were to go on Google Maps or Google Earth and look at this area, it's just a large green field, which I was a little surprised by. But so I guess in 1928 there was the Victory Column, which isn't there right now but will be at the end, which I guess I can mention. A lot of you pointed out the fact that originally, at least during this time period, the Victory Column was located right there in the center of this little roundabout type thing, which I placed in the very, very first episode. The Victory Column, you can kind of see there just a second ago on the far right, but I placed it in the roundabout where it currently exists now. And many of you pointed out that it wasn't moved there until the late 1930s. So once I realized that, and you guys let me know, then I ended up actually switching it to the little roundabout there in front of the Reichstag, and I put that little fountain there into where the Victory Column is currently, right there to the right. However, I do actually expand the Tiergarten, because originally I changed the path of the rivers a bit and their looks to be a little more accurate to Berlin. But originally I had the rivers running really close to where I am now, a really wide river, not the one there on the left, but I guess perpendicular to that there was one running, and that's why I initially made the park there much smaller than it actually is in real life. So considering that I revamped the river and made this area significantly larger, I ended up adding some more to the park there and making it much more larger and I guess a little more realistic to what it looked like in now and also in 1929. But so I guess another thing I should mention is some of you asked for an asset list, which I would love to provide, but I'm not, I guess this is going to be a question to you if any of you would know. But the way I'm building this series is I'm doing a family share from my original account to a new account, and that's in order to, since I have my Las Colinas series going for the Southern California city, which is still live, so all of you who were subscribed back then and maybe missing that, I will get back to it eventually. Right now I'm really excited and into this build, but one day it will come back. But anyways, so that build is under my normal account, whereas this one is under a new account in which I'm family sharing City Skylines, so I don't have to rebuy it and all the DLC and everything. But so because I'm family sharing it, it doesn't let you create a collection in the Steam Workshop. So I'm unable to, make a list of all the assets I'm using and then give you guys a link. So I have no idea any workarounds. There's honestly probably not, but if any of you do know any way, I could, considering that I am family sharing it on this account that I'm using, if there's any way to make an asset list, because a lot of you have asked for it, and it's something I could easily do if I had the capability to. So let me know. I wouldn't be surprised if there's not, but that's why I'm not providing one. So just so you guys know, I'm not ignoring you or anything. But anyways, so as you can see here, I'm just decorating a bit of the area around the Reichstag, and I guess I wasn't talking a lot about what I was building, but I did add a little more than what actually existed back in 1929, at least based off what I was looking at in the satellite view from the website I was looking at. But it just looked relatively plain, so I wanted to make it look a little nicer, which this part here I was not a fan of how I did with the trees there, so I ended up getting rid of those off camera. It just did not look right. So, and I don't know, I wasn't honestly that thrilled about this entire area either. It's just, I copied it, or not copied it, I was inspired by what actually existed, and it resembles it fairly accurately, but I don't know, it's just something looks off. I'm not entirely sure what or why, but in the cinematics you'll see a couple shots that it looks pretty decent, but looking at what actually existed back then, as I think I already mentioned, but there's a ton of just empty space of just pavement, it looked like. And it could have been grass, or I'm not really sure. It's hard to tell based on the overhead satellite view I was looking at. But yeah, I definitely added some stuff just to make it a little more detailed, because in this game it's hard to make empty space look realistic or nice. But that wraps up the part of the Reichstag. As I said with some of the things, I do go back, unfortunately, off camera, because this video was already, I had a ton of footage I had to cut back, but I went back off camera to kind of fix some things and make it look better. So you'll see that in the cinematics at the very end. But so here, I finally started building part of the S-Bahn in the city. I was going to wait to start building any sort of train lines until I had some more of the city built, but I don't know, it's such an iconic thing to Berlin, and I really wanted to try and build such an extensive transportation system. I was looking forward to it and quite excited, so I figured I'd try it out. Since, I have a decent amount of the city built now, so at least it makes sense to have this one station, because this is located, I built this keeping in mind the Bahnhof Berlin Friedrichstrasse, if I'm saying that correctly, probably not, but that's the one that this is supposed to be in place of, so it's in a fairly accurate position to the one in real life. But this actual train station asset is one from Vienna, I believe. So, it's not one that actually existed in Berlin, but it's a nice asset. It's got the general theme of, since it is from Austria, so it looks fine to be in a German city. But, yeah, so I was trying to replicate the path of the train lines to, be as accurate to what actually existed, since I figured that was something simple enough that I could copy and just look at a satellite view of the train line and whatnot. But even though, I've never, before this series started, looked in depth to, the infrastructure and rail lines and roads of Berlin, or really any European city for that matter. But, I was really surprised about the lack of, a central terminus train station in Berlin, at least modern day, because I know there was several back in 1929, which actually some of those assets exist on the workshop, which I will eventually get around to building those, but that will probably be several episodes down the road. But, I guess let me know, those of you familiar or who live in, Germany, Berlin, whatever it may be, let me know why there aren't really, there's really no terminal train station, which when I think of European cities and their train lines, I can't really think of a city, at least a major city, that doesn't have a large terminal train station. So I just found that kind of interesting about Berlin, that they never rebuilt one after, the Second World War, or just renovated one that was, destroyed or whatever. But, yeah, let me know, because that's something interesting that I have no idea about. But, so I did, I guess you can see right there, I made an extension to the platform, just because the one in real life that existed back then, and also currently, the platform is much longer, and it kind of curves a bit along with the station. So I made it a little longer. I probably should have made it even longer, honestly, just because there's a lot of space up there that from on the gravel there's just nothing there. But for now, I just kept it as it is. But anyways, right here, I actually finally, for the first time, just ever, doesn't matter, not just, as in a recorded video, just from me ever using the mod procedural objects. Because, I've known for a very long time about how many amazingly cool things you could actually do with it. But a very, very, very long time ago, I installed the mod basically right when it came out. And boy, that thing was rough back then. Obviously, I guess now that I've, tried it again, it's improved greatly, and there's many more capabilities, and it's much more intuitive and easier to use. But, just how easy it is to remove those pillar things or whatever they are, just to hide it, so make it a little nicer. Because normally I just would have been like, whatever. It's not a terribly bad thing to have those things sticking out still, but now that I could easily remove those, then I was like, what the heck, might as well try it. Although it did leave that kind of glitchy thing there on the wall. I'm not really sure why, so I just ended up covering that with just some trees, and just to make it look a little nicer so you don't have to see that glitch there. I probably could have fixed it, but that was the very first thing I ever did with procedural objects, so definitely not a hard thing, something very easily once I routinely use procedural objects. I'm sure I'll be able to do that in half a second, but I had watched a couple of tutorial videos and how to basically figure out how the heck to use it, because I was totally lost. But it is pretty simple, actually, now that I've used it and used a couple of its features, and I definitely expect to use it a ton more in the future. But so here in this tiny space between the train station and just I guess where much of the city blocks are located, there's this awkward little thin, long triangle just segment of land that I wasn't really sure what to put there. I didn't want to just put more buildings, plus it's very thin, this little piece of piece of land, so I wasn't really sure what buildings would fit there and look nice. So someone brought up in the comments on the previous video that markets were a fairly common thing back then, which makes sense. So I figured I might as well fit in a tiny little market here. It doesn't, when I don't end up building it on this entire area here, but kind of just this half of the little piece here of land that I build a small market. These assets are all from I'm not sure the creator, but they're from some Paris 1920s set. So it gives you a lot of things you can throw down and a lot of options, and it's a very nice set, and it's all themed in the 1920s, so it works perfectly. But yeah, I thought it would look nice, and definitely something realistic little detail that adds some nice liveliness to the city, and breaks up the monotony of just laying down a bunch of blocks of buildings and stuff. But yeah, it comes with little shop workers or whatever they are, which, yeah, it's a very nice collection. So I mean, you could probably even use it in not necessarily 1920s cities, but just, yeah, really anywhere. Just have a little street market, whatever it may be. It's very nice. But yeah, so it's just that small little portion there that I built a market. I threw down a couple crowd generators, some of the small ones. I think with those things, because I know other YouTubers have brought up the issue where they can throw a lot of those down, and over time they notice that there's fewer and fewer people arriving at the crowd generators, and eventually, you can have one or two people there. And at least from what I've noticed with those is that when you use the crowd generators, it seems the more and more you place, it seems like there's a limited number of people who will spawn in crowd generators in your entire city. So just say, 1,000 people will spawn. So if you throw down one, then you'll have a ton of people spawning. Because I've had seemingly hundreds of people spawn in one crowd generator, and then I lay a few more down, and the next thing I know, I have like 10 or less. So I think it's just as you lay more down, they just kind of dilutes the crowd number, which is kind of unfortunate, but I think that's the case. So I've kind of been more careful in the number of ones I'm placing, or at least in the same area. But anyway, so here I continue extending the train line to I didn't add any station in this area, at least on this side of the river. I think the one would be actually right about at this corner here where one exists. So I will eventually put one there once I actually start building other things across the river. But for now, I just wanted to lay the train line to this station here, which this station is actually a station in Berlin. Can't think of the name, it's not located where I put it. But yeah, the train stations in this game, when you're trying to build, as accurate to the S-Bahn as one that existed back then, that's definitely one area where you're pretty limited in. So even if I wanted to recreate Berlin to 1-to-1, it'd be hard to do so with the number of train station and just general assets for that available. But yeah, so the most of the ending part of this video is just me making this, finishing this tram line. I found a nice S-Bahn commuter train from the 20s or 30s, the asset, which looks very nice. So I was actually, originally when I started the city, I didn't know that existed, even though I was looking for it, but somehow I wasn't able to find it, but someone told me that one existed in the workshop, so thank you very much for that. So I was able to add that to the game, which of course is a nice little detail that is accurate to Berlin. But so as we're getting pretty close to the end of the video, there is one thing that I do unfortunately need to mention. So originally when I was doing this series, Germany 1929, I know, and I mentioned in the first episode why I chose this time period, but also brought up, understanding that this was the start of a very tumultuous and very unfortunate part of history. But in the previous episode, someone commented that the best part of 1929 was the rise of the NSDAP. So, it goes without saying that anything like that will just be instantly deleted in the comments. And I hoped I wouldn't have to deal with anything like that, but it happened already, so it should go without saying. But obviously anything like that, any promotion of such things will not be tolerated on the channel. And if anyone has to have discussions about the history of this time period and things like that, that's one thing. But actual promotion of any sort of ideology like that is obviously going to be instantly deleted, as that comment was the other day. So I know many of you wouldn't ever do that, but if the few that would, just know that it's not going to be tolerated, obviously. So please just avoid that. And I don't want to have to stop the series or ban or prohibit any comments on all my videos, because it's not something I want to do. But if that gets to the point that I have to, which I sure hope it won't, but if it does get to that point, then of course I will. But anyways, I guess as we are wrapping up this video and moving on from that point, I just want to say thanks again to everyone who has been supportive and helping me out with resources. Every video I've gotten more and more people giving me new suggestions and new things to look at, which is really nice, because the more and more ideas I have, the more and more images, videos, whatever it may be, all that's going to help me build a better city and create a better series. So I really appreciate it from all you. But so I guess I can start discussing, but in a short minute or so, there's just going to be a brief overview of the city, what we have built so far, and you'll see basically the reworked rivers, which I just flattened out a lot of that area and to redo the rivers and make it a little more accurate to what is in Berlin. And when you do see it in several seconds from now, it's again not 100% to the rivers that are actually exist in Berlin, but it's definitely much closer to them what I had before. So they're a little thicker. They're not. I noticed in Berlin the rivers are pretty narrow, but I left them a little thicker just so once I actually build roads and buildings and walls up to there, that'll actually shrink it down. So it leaves me space to do, a little more things. But so here it is. That is what we have. I guess I know when I did Las Colinas, a lot of you wanted me to just do general overviews at the very, very end just to see what's built so far. But you can also see there the extended part of the Tiergarten and just what we have so far. So as we get to the cinematics now, I hope you enjoyed the episode, and I will see you in the next episode next week.